Good morning, listeners. I hope that I find you all well and ready for our little get-together this morning. It's been really hot, and I hope that you are managing to remain rather cool despite the heat. We've had a request to talk about creativity and inspiration, and how do we cultivate it, how do we nurture it, and how do we make sure we continue to remain innovative and inspired. So, of course, when we talk about creativity, most of us immediately think about artists who paint beautifully or sculpt, or perhaps even singers and performers. We talk about the arts, and the natural inclination is to associate those professions with creativity. But creativity is present in all of us, particularly young children. So parents, listen up. If you've got a young child and they want to draw a blue sun and a person with 3 legs and so on, don't be too harsh on correcting them, because that is their imagination. They will in good time work out that the sun is not blue and that people don't have 3 or 5 legs, etc. So don't be too hard in saying, don't be silly, have you ever seen a blue sun? Because then they feel that it's wrong to use the imagination, and it's wrong to share how they see things. So that's just an aside. Our young children have wonderful imaginations, and very often parents, and of course once they go to school, our schooling system says, no, well, you can't do that. That is not how it is. That is not so-called reality. So how does creativity work? Why is it important to us to be creative and remain creative? Well, creativity helps us to think out the box. So when something happens, or you want to solve a problem, or you want to make something more pleasant, not necessarily a problem, you can think out of the box. You don't go to the well-used, well-trodden path of rehashing the same old that has been done a million times. We find unusual solutions, and oftentimes you will find that prospective employers will ask or explore your problem-solving ability. I don't know if it's still the practice today, but some years ago, prospective employers, love to throw let's call it a silly question at the interviewee. The one client I had said to me, well, the prospective employer said, if you were a truck driver, long-distance truck driver, how would you install a coffee-making machine in the truck? Well, of course, that has all sorts of connotations, and we all know cognitively it's not a good idea. Hot coffee in the truck, and if you swerve and it falls over, etc. But what they wanted to know was, can he use his imagination? And fortunately, he cottoned on, and he had a wonderful, elaborate, colorful explanation of how he would install a coffee machine in this truck of his, this imaginary truck. So employers will test your problem-solving abilities, because what employers and your superiors don't want is for you to run into their office ever so often and saying, that's happened and I don't know what to do. And again, we all know that people are inclined to say, well, come to me with a solution, and then talk about that. What they want from you is use your imagination. We often say that to our children, or we ought to. What do you think you should do? Why don't you ever think? And then come back to me and we can chat about it. That way, you cultivate their imagination and do it for yourself. Next time you run into a difficulty, however small or big, think about it and say, how can this be solved or made easier in a new and different way? And folks, from your dress sense, we all have seen the ladies, particular gentlemen as well, who dress beautifully, and they can just put things together, and they look stunning, and you think, well, I would never have thought that. I would never have thought to put those colors together. I have a vivid recollection of the famous picture of Princess Diana sitting in front of the famous, the name escapes me now, Temple of Love in India. And she was wearing, I think it was pink and purple, or orange and purple, and it looked just stunning. And the rest of us probably, well, if you're anything like me, would have thought, wow, that looks amazing, but I would never have thought of taking those two colors out of my wardrobe. And so from your dress sense to your problem solving, to decorating a cake, to deciding what am I going to do this Valentine's Day for my significant other. Well, we're over the breakfast in bed, and we're over the chocolates and the red rose that costs a fortune and never opens. The little heads just hang. So what can I do to show him or her that I love them, that they're special, and that I value them? That is imagination. So imagination plays a role every single day. What can I put on my kids' sandwiches today for school? You're using your imagination to work something different out. Otherwise, they say, Mom, I'm so tired of peanut butter and jam, and I'm so tired of whatever it is they usually get. And this is how important our imagination is. Allegedly, Einstein once said, imagination is more important than education. Now, of course, ideally we would need both, because you can imagine something, but if you can't take that forward, it's going to live and die in your head. But if you think about it, everything, and I mean every single thing, is a product of someone's imagination. The chair that you're sitting on, the bike your kiddie's riding, the pen you're writing with your cell phone, the computer, the space shuttle, the box of tissues on your dressing table, the new utensil in your kitchen. It was first imagined by someone, wasn't it? And then that person started putting flesh on the bone, so to speak, and started to perhaps make a prototype, etc. And so it goes. We think of the famous doorlosa that was invented by a South African and is now used all over. It's very big in the Netherlands, as far as I'm aware, with their land issues. That was imagined by someone and say, well, we can't really build a wall along the whole seafront. That's going to be a bit impractical. And everything else kind of gets eroded and it doesn't really do the job. And he came up with this weird-shaped concrete design that's been a winner ever since. But one day someone will improve on that and say, well, these doors have worked perfectly fine, but I'm sure there's actually a better, cheaper, more effective way of doing it. And they will start to imagine it and start to draw it and start experimenting with it in big water tanks and so on and so forth. You get the idea. I love to sew from time to time. I scrapbook, and when I see a nice photograph of something or one of my family members and I want to scrapbook it, then I get all my stuff out and I scratch around like a chicken in a new run. And I think, well, how can I do this? Shall I put this together? No, let's put in a bit of that, and so on. So imagination is crucial in every day of your life. Now, the next question is, how do we cultivate it and how do we stimulate it? How do we remain imaginative and creative so that we can invent things, essentially? Listeners, read. I know this is my hobby horse and I often go on about it, but read. Read a book. You will find out that people do things differently. Go out and see things. Go to the local botanical garden or go for a walk on the beach, or just go out. Don't sit in your home and think, well, you know what, I'm fresh out of ideas and I have no way forward with this. You're not going to get very far if that's your attitude. Go out and see things. Open your mind. So often we listen to people and they've got a fixed idea about something and they're really not interested in anything anyone else has to say. And whether it's the color they want their house, or particular design of furniture, or politics, or religion, or planet warming, or whatever. They have got their idea, and in their mind it is the only answer, the only way to look at it, and that's it. That's a closed mind, and that is a total lack of imagination. So open your mind and listen, really listen to someone else's point of view, and then be curious. Be curious and be interested, and ask them questions. At least at the end of the day, you can walk away and say, you know what, I got all the information I could possibly get from that person. And I'm still not convinced that it is a better way than what I've been looking at it. Or it's different, it's interesting, and it's nice to listen to another perspective. And be open to it and take from it what you will. Maybe you just get one or two little nuggets that you think, well, I'm going to do that. We all steal with our eyes, don't we? We will page through a magazine and say, oh, that's an idea. I'm going to put a vase in that corner of my home, or I'm going to paint a wall a different color. And you stole it from a magazine. Or the advertisements of various companies, be they furnitures or whatever. The displays we see in shop windows. A mannequin is dressed in something you like, and you say, oh, that's nice, and you may or may not go in and purchase an item based on someone else's imagination, based on what someone else has produced. So start using your imagination. Let it, as they say, run wild, and take an interest and be curious. Be curious about how other people see and do things. If there's someone you really admire who always seem to be innovative, go and chat to that person. If they're not in a place where they're accessible, they may be in another province or another country, read up on them, get some of the material, do a Google search, and often they will say, well, I get my inspiration from watching this or watching that or reading something. If you can travel. It doesn't have to be to the furthest corners of the globe, but go for a drive somewhere relatively close by and see what's going on. And open your mind, take an interest and be curious. And then experiment. It's great to experiment, and I think it was Newton who tried something, 900 times, and on the 901st time he invented the light bulb, and so it goes. Very few inventions work the very first time. It gets tried out and refined, and tried out and refined, and eventually it arrives on our shelves or on the showroom floor. Look at the cars, look at the amazing vehicles that are produced every year. There are cars that can park themselves. 10 years ago we would have said, you are delusional, you have had a break with reality. This is never going to happen, it will be an utter disaster. Now we have cars that can drive themselves. Again, not perfected yet, but someone said, I wonder what that would be like if I can design a car that you can program and it can drive itself with all the sensors to sense other traffic, etc., etc. Now, not all of us are going to invent self-driving cars. I would personally love a self-vacuuming vacuum cleaner, self-driving vacuum cleaner, not to mention the self-cleaning oven and self-defrosting fridge, although they're just about there. But this will all come about because someone did not shut down their imagination. Someone said, everything is possible. I'm not going to let anyone tell me that's impossible, you're wasting your time. Do it, experiment. Whatever your field is that you're interested in, just have fun. And when you relax and you're having fun, you get the great ideas. They just seem to flow. Don't make it too much of a mission of, I have to find the solution today and I have to decide what color I'm going to paint the room today. Just look at magazines, go to the paint shop, explore colors that feel good to you, because you may want a yellow room and I may want a teal room, and someone else would say, well, I like a bit of purple. So, but look at those combinations, look at what you can do, and use your imagination daily. Find a different route to drive to work. find a different route home, stop at a different cafe to get your bread and milk. It's imagination. That's exploring. You may just walk in, see a poster or a display that inspires you, or bump into someone. Listeners, last Sunday I went to a local mall here. My husband dropped me off and he was taking the car to the car wash. And when he messaged me and said, I'm ready, I said, well, I'm done at the shops. I'll meet you outside. As I was standing waiting, a very well-dressed elderly lady approached me. She just looked at me and shook her and she said, the older you get, the stupider you get. And so we started chatting and she said she'd left her purse in her grandson's car and now she hasn't got money for a cup of tea, etc., etc. Unfortunately, I don't carry cash. I do everything with a debit card. So I couldn't help her, but I had such a beautiful interaction with this lady who was beautifully dressed, well-groomed, and she inspired me to raise the bar a little bit. She used her imagination when she got up on Sunday morning and thought, well, I'm going for a cup of tea. My grandson can drop me off while he's got to pop into the office. And she looked gorgeous. That is imagination. That is not saying, well, I don't know what to wear. I'm just going to pull this on and, let the chips fall where they may. It depends from person to person. It's not a one-size-fits-all. But, again, use your imagination and say, I don't know what to wear, so what shall I do that's different? What have I never combined before? What have I never tried out together before? Maybe just a scarf that looks different. Or guys, you can say, I actually never wear a belt, so maybe I'm going to wear a belt today. Or play around, have fun. And the more you do it, the easier it gets to be innovative. The easier your imagination kicks in. And the more, remember, those synapses connect in the brain that have been denied that lifeblood. They connect. And yes, so nurture your imagination, stay inspired by being curious, by keeping your mind open, by getting out, by reading, by looking, and remaining interested in the world around you and in different ways of seeing and doing things. I hope that inspired you. I hope that gave you some ideas for a new attitude to life and all its interesting twists and turns and curves, because everything and anything is possible. Till next week.
The radio station you can't live without. This is your radio.
This is South Coast Radio.